Casey Street. My major is wildlife, and the topic we have is infrastructure. And I'm gonna pass it to the next. She can introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Kiara Lester. I'm from Steiner Sioux Tribe, and my major is social work.
My name is Elias Lenore. I'm from Turtle Mountain, and I'm in business administration major.
Hello, my name is Mitchell Yolwolf. I'm from the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe. My major is pre-engineering.
And the topic again, just to restate it, is infrastructure, and more or less what are the problems with infrastructure on reservations. And the definitions in our topic question, I chose the word "what," and it's according to dictionary.com, and it means used interrogatively as a request for specific information.
Well, definition I picked was problem, meaning any question or matter involving doubt, uncertainty, or difficulty.
And I put infrastructure. The definition of that is the fundamental facilities and systems serving a country, city, or area, such as transportation and communication systems, power plants, and schools. The basic underlying framework or features of a system or organization.
The definition I picked was reservation, the act of keeping back, withholding, or setting apart a tract of public land set apart for a special purpose, as for the use of an Indian tribe.
And the article I chose was Indian education maintaining tribal sovereignty through Native American culture and language. And the summary is the U.S. government has a long history of trying to change or eliminate Native American culture through policies of assimilation and termination. This included taking and forcing Native children into schools that aim to take away their culture identity. The main goal of these schools was trying to make Native children become more American in their language and religion. This led to the loss of many Native languages and traditions. Boarding schools were really harmful as they took children away from their families, punished them for speaking their languages, and tried to disconnect them from their heritage. As a result, many Native languages became endangered and students lost touch with their culture. With all these past problems, this affects education today. With Natives having the lowest graduation rate, today's efforts are being made to improve Native American education and help students reconnect with their culture. Some federal laws like the Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act try to support this. Keeping Native languages and traditions is now seen as an important role for individual student success, but also for maintaining tribal sovereignty and culture identity. Although the government has just now started to recognize its responsibility to help Native education, there's still lots of work to be done to help repair the damage caused by the past policies and fully support Native communities.
And then the article I picked was Canada's response to the on-reserve housing crisis, and that's by Anna Durbin. And in this article, the summary I guess I picked was substandard housing is linked to adverse health. And this study was done in an Indian reserve in Canada. Native Americans often have worse health than the general population, with increased rates of mental illness, alcoholism, family violence, injuries, diabetes, tuberculosis, obesity, lower life expectancies, and higher suicide rates. They are connecting overcrowding and mold to respiratory illnesses in these communities with some standard building materials and living conditions. Some houses in Indian communities can have multiple people living in one room, resulting in overcrowding. The high prevalence of mold on reservation is likely because between the 1960s and the 80s, most reserve housing was centrally designed and delivered by the federal government. Many of the houses, schools, and workplaces were built on wood frames, which are prone to mold. The solution to this problem is having inspectors come and inspect the issue. It's brought to the tribal housing, and a crew will either work on the unit or board it up and leave it. Then this causes an issue with the house structure itself because it sits there and it deteriorates over the years. But what I got from this article was, and I used to work in tribal housing, so I've been on calls to where I've seen black mold myself, and where I've seen houses that still had lead paint or asbestos. just like old building materials that we don't use anymore because they've been found to cause health problems, especially with the asbestos that could cause tuberculosis, and with substandard building houses, especially, you got people living there, and if you have like poor building materials, that could cause like air leaks, so that causes like your heat to go out, or your central air to go out, and also allows like and then there goes your electricity bill right there. You're burning more up. Or you can have water leaks too, and water leaks cause mold, and mold does cause like respiratory illnesses. And I seen that myself. I've been in houses that had rotting floors, that had rotting, especially in the bathrooms, mostly with water. And then most of the time it is like FEMA homes or houses that were shipped or delivered by the government, especially from that 60s and 80s, mostly like Air Force Base homes, and most of them have that lead paint and that asbestos in there. So it's good to do your research and just get your house inspected, and and just with that, it'll help you in the long run, and it'll help your generational, whoever lives there next. But with that, I just hope to bring awareness to that, to have like better building materials, and with that it becomes like having more access to resources. I just wanted to share that summary, and thank you.
Thank you.
The article I picked was Disparity of Treatment and Duty to Respect Patients' Autonomy in Mental Health Care of Native Americans by Gina Santori. My summary goal. A big struggle we have today is that Native Americans do not get the full health coverage they need. We have an alarming rate of 21% of Native Americans who don't get health care coverage, compared to 9.4% of the U.S. population. We also have a higher rate of post-traumatic stress disorder, suicide, and other mental illnesses. Some of us suffer from intergenerational trauma, which is trauma that is passed down from generations before us, that can be caused by loss of land, forced relocation, separation of families, and loss of culture. Certain mental health practitioners are criticized for failing to offer Native Americans proper health care for mental illness, mentally ill, such as those with depression. One of the many issues faced is being able to tell when a person is mentally stable, which can be identified by seeing if they can make decisions on their own about their life. According to researchers, the DSM is a standard diagnostic tool for classifying mental disorders, but was later criticized for not covering diagnostics for all Americans. The DSM has been edited many times so that the researchers can understand mental health more clearly.
Thank you.
The article that I chose was Identifying Service Quality Gaps Between Patients and Providers in a Native American Outpatient Clinic. On every reservation in the United States, they have an IHS facility, which is an Indian Health Services. There are many things wrong with this type of rural healthcare system. From the way the buildings look inside and out, the services they give to every one of their patients in this article that I have chosen, it tells that these IHS facilities have a low satisfaction rate, no matter where they are located in the U.S., according to Dorsey. This study explored potential reasons why a clinic on a Native American reservation is receiving lower patient satisfaction comparison to state and nation averages. Sometimes you can go to IHS for an emergency and you will still have to wait for more than an hour to be seen by a healthcare provider. It is so hard to obtain an appointment for people who don't really have the resources to make it to the appointment. IHS in rural areas get less funding from the state, so they can't always give their patients the proper care.
Thank you. All right, so group number 2, you talked about the system, the infrastructure, really good definitions, and that it takes all of these parts to the system. The inspections is part of a solution for housing, and that was brought up clearly. And so we also need inspectors for medical, because people need testing, they need it updated in those clinics and the blue buildings and the IHS buildings. And so, again, technology is not cheap, but for testing, for MRI, CTs, and it's emergency room treatment, usually if there's a physician, usually a physician assistant or an RN, who can give great care. Okay, they can give awesome care. But that whole idea of inspecting the infrastructure, and that is something you can take with you when you leave this room today, is that we have infrastructure problems across the board. But part of what you're talking about, each one of you, is the solutions in particular areas. And I like that word inspection, because that's what you did with your research. You read an article, you inspected it, you digested it, and then you had to, crank out a summary about it, which was an exercise in remembering what the article was about. Always thinking, how am I adding to this group on this particular topic? And that infrastructure is very much like a group discussion. You have different cogs, but they all have issues, okay? Again, somebody said access to resources. Did we hear that with your group? So it's like we're hearing this word inspection, we're hearing words resource. Really good, Mitchell, on the mental health. Do you know what year your article was written? Because you said 21% don't have health.
2021.
So pretty close. I think it's higher than 21. Do you think 80% of natives have health insurance?
With Medicare, they changed the thing, so a lot
So
of
it's-
people get dropped out.
Oh.
They can't.
Yeah, I wrote that stat down just because I thought, man, maybe it has improved from, and you said it was 2020?
21%.
Yeah, so, because that's fairly low. And Kaysen spoke about a Canadian, patients and providers with Kiera, and the culture and the damage and the languages Elias mentioned. Do you guys have any questions from the audience? Yep.
Okay, what do each of you think is like the biggest problem? Because there's like a lot of problems. What do you think is the best, like the most?
If you wrote your list, what would be on the top to get done? What would be your priority?
This is just my opinion. But I think for the biggest issue, mostly on the native reservations, is the trickle-down effect from the U.S. government and their attempt of genocide of Native Americans, not just U.S. government, Canadian government as well. So like a lot of the things that are going on here are also going on in Canada. But what I think what was a big deal for Native Americans is getting, what Elias said was our language and our culture and our ways forced away from us, and then being taught that they're bad, they're double ways and blah, 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 the whole church era of that too. And then not knowing, and then plus the boarding school era, I'm pretty sure everyone knows what the evils that happen at boarding schools. And that, for me, my great-grandma was in a boarding school, so like that wasn't even that long ago. And then I seen firsthand like what they went through as kids, you know, what the nuns did, what the priests did, and then how it carries into their adult life, and that can lead to like alcoholism, drug abuse, and same thing what she said with that IHS, you know, most of the time they diagnose you, just give you pills, and then that causes like opioid addiction in a sense, and it's because like, you know, access to resources is bad, so that could cause like another health issue, and then with limited technology, you could miss like something major, and then before it's too late, you know, you have like your kidneys are shut down, you have stage 4 cancer, you know, the worst of the worst, and then before you know it, you pass away. And
That's very
feel like
good. It's
most-
very good that you bring up the historical trauma to have just an understanding of why it is the way it is.
yeah, but, you could link it all the way back to that, but I guess more of the sense is just bringing culture and all this back and awareness to give Indians a sense of pride and a sense of identity, and then eventually teach them how to be an individual again, and then be a proud nation again. But I know it'll happen, and I know, you know, in the future, but I have high hopes.
Good question. I mean, that's a question for all of us. What would be priorities? Good. So you have hope.
Oh, do all of us have to
Yeah.
answer?
Well, he covered quite a few there, so.
I think the biggest problem would probably be funding. The government doesn't really give the IHS like the proper funding that they need. And so inside their buildings, if you have ever been into an IHS building, it's kind of like not sanitary, I guess. It's like kind of gross on the inside. Sometimes they don't have the proper like instruments and stuff to do testing on you, so like they would have to transfer you up to Bismarck or somewhere, like maybe even like Rapid City if it's like a really bad emergency, like, so you can't always go to IHS for emergency things.
So like I said, education, I think kind of starts there, because like with Native Americans having the lowest graduation rate, I feel like that ties into a lot of their life aspect anyway. So that's why I kind of tackled that, and I talked about the background, like in boarding schools, how that affects trauma and family today. So I just kind of went across that, and that's pretty important.
Mine would have to be mental health, because I know a lot of people suffer from mental health, and none of us really want to look out for help. And it's not
I
really-
think the help on campus has really stepped it up in the last couple of years since COVID. Just the communication with wellness and just posters. I just think they have really pushed the counselors over there to get word out if somebody needs help. And that's just here. But you know that education is key, money. So you're saying very important things that all tie together with infrastructure. But yeah, everything needs to improve, but it is much better than 5 years ago for students here. Now, education, you could debate it forever. You could go to 5 different schools and have 5 opinions, but it is key. It is key for culture. It is key for basic Native knowledge. If you don't get it from home, where do you learn? And that's why we have Indigenous classes, Dakota Woodhouse, Good House here, etc. So yeah, good. Any other questions? You covered a lot, you know. Should we do another group discussion? Okay, thank you.